Jane, thanks for talking with me today. It's great to be here with you. Let's begin with the election, of course, which is on everybody's minds. It's been a drawn out process. To some degree, it has shown the strengths of the American electoral system and the importance of the rule of law. On the other hand, of course, the uncertainty and the delay in formalizing a winner has posed a risk. How do you see this election playing out in terms of relations with allies and rivals alike? And if I may, perhaps we could begin this by talking a little bit about your own personal experience as a candidate for re-election to Congress in 1994, when it took 5 weeks to certify the results. And ultimately, you won by quite a narrow margin, 812 votes over Mayor Susan Brooks in what was a highly Republican year.
That's true. Well, let me say how proud of the Wilson Center I am to do this whole event over the next weeks, and how smart the people at the Wilson Center, including you, are. In 1994, my first re-election, I was down 200 votes, 250 votes on election night. They stopped counting. There were 10,000 uncounted absentee ballots, and over the next 2 weeks, with observers on both sides, they were counted. It took another 3 weeks to certify my race. So I have my personal experience with these very close elections. And what happened after that was my opponent challenged it a bit longer and finally gave up. I was certified, and I served my second term in Congress and went on to serve 9 terms. With respect to this race, this challenge is really unprecedented. The race has been called. It's very clear that the margins are high in many states, and that ultimately Vice President Biden will be respected as president-elect. In fact, he is around the world. I just add one more thing, Duncan, which is that over the years, I've been an election observer in many countries around the world, including Chile, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Egypt, Tunisia, Afghanistan, and all these places have had trouble with election process. And while I was there, it never occurred to me that my own country would be setting a bad example. So now what? With allies and friends, we need to get on with this. The president-elect needs to have a legal transition, which the current president should be allowing. And he needs to articulate his strategy going forward, and there needs to be a seamless transition in about 70 days. And I think the Biden administration view of world alliances is very different, and I think our allies will happily welcome us back.
That's great. Yes, I think we all hope for a speedy resolution to this. If we can look ahead now for a second, whilst at the same time looking back, for the past 4 years, we've been in an era of economic nationalism, not just here in the United States, but around the world. Here in the US, we've had the America First doctrine. Let me ask you, how do you think that this will change under a Biden administration, in particular under his stated approach of Build Back Better? And secondly, is America back on the global stage, as President-elect Biden said the other day? If not, what are the risks in the short, medium, and long term?
Well, let's start with Build Back Better. The key word in Build Back Better is better. We have finally begun to understand that globalization, which we all hailed as a magic remedy for a better world, isn't better necessarily. It certainly isn't better for a lot of people. A lot more people have been left out of globalization than were part of the pre-globalized economy. And the challenge now is to include those people. And I think the Biden administration gets that. It's not going to happen on January 21st. It's going to happen with a long-term strategy with our allies and trading partners. So what do I see? I see that economic populism will stick around worldwide until we have inclusive globalization. And I think Biden has a strategy for that. And I think he has a great economic team. And I also think he will listen to his team. And we have some starts. Let's give the Trump administration some credit for USMCA, the Mexico-Canada agreement, which is an improvement on NAFTA. Trump is right about that. And which builds in technology as part of the arrangements among Canada, Mexico, and the US, and which would not have happened without him pushing and without bipartisan support from Democrats. But that's a start. If we could replicate that, rejoin some of the alliances we dropped out of, I'm still hoping for TPP in Asia, And I think the world economy and the inclusive economy will build quickly, and economic populism will recede.
Well, I think you provided me with a perfect segue to my final question for you, Jane. Part of my new brief at the Wilson Center is to oversee the spotlight issues that we have. And one of those is great power competition. I wonder if you could give us your vision of how you see this developing over the next 4 years, and how the United States can strengthen its position on the world stage. Specifically, perhaps you could comment on the need for a bipartisan approach to this crucial issue.
Well, I think we need a bipartisan approach to every issue. And I have been just tragically disappointed over many years that bipartisanship has receded in the United States Congress and in Washington. But on this subject, I think we focused too long after 9/11, which was 19 years ago, on the terror threat to the United States. There still is a terror threat, both outside and inside the United States. Right-wing militias, according to many observers, are also a terror threat. But we neglected China's rise, and we neglected Russia's mischief. And so it was smart of the Trump administration, especially under the leadership of Secretary of Defense Mattis, to come up with a new national security strategy, which identified Russia and China as strategic competitors. Both of those words matter, strategic and competitor. We don't have a strategy yet to deal with either one of them. And the goal was to keep them separate, which hasn't happened. And we don't have a goal to compete effectively with either one of them. The China problem's harder because China has a robust economy, Russia doesn't. But nonetheless, a big challenge for the Biden administration, and again, with a very good experienced team, will be to fill out the contours of that strategy and to make the US finally, with our allies, strategic competitors of China and Russia. And I think the world has to accept the fact that we are not the only superpower, that this is a multipolar world, and articulating how we navigate this is going to be tricky. And again, it's another opportunity for the Wilson Center with our in-house geniuses, as I call all of you, to think through these hard problems and come up with actionable ideas.
Jane, this is obviously an area where you could talk for hours and hours and hours, particularly if we had a good tequila to share. But you know, our time is up. Let me just take this opportunity to thank you for everything that you do for us at the Wilson Center, and of course, for everything you've done in your long and distinguished career.
Well, thank you, Duncan, and thank you for what you do at the Wilson Center and your sort of multicultural approach to things, and the fact that in your own family there is new life. And let's think about why we're doing this. We're doing this for future generations. We want to leave them a better world. My generation hasn't done so well in terms of making the world better, but I'm counting on you, and I'm still counting on me to do better in the next years.
Jane Harman, thank you very much. Back over to you, John.